The elevator doors opened with a soft ding, and every person on the 32nd floor seemed to freeze. You could actually hear the sound of keyboards stopping mid-sentence and coffee cups being set down too carefully on desks. Someone whispered, "He's here," and within seconds, the entire floor had transformed from a normal workplace into something that felt more like a library during final exams. Alexander Cross stepped out of the elevator, his expensive shoes making sharp clicking sounds against the polished marble floor. At 45 years old, he had built Crosstech Industries from nothing into a company worth over $2 billion. But somewhere along the way, success had turned him into something his own employees feared more than getting fired. Lisa Park, who managed the office operations, watched from her desk as Alexander walked past. She had been working here for 8 years and remembered when he used to say good morning to people. Now he moved through the office like he owned not just the building, but the people inside it too, which, in a way, he kind of did. The first victim of the day was Kevin, a young guy who had started in accounting just 3 months ago. Kevin was smart, worked hard, and always stayed late to make sure his reports were perfect. But today, he had made the mistake of printing his quarterly analysis on regular paper instead of the expensive letterhead that Alexander insisted on for all executive reports. "What is this garbage?" Alexander's voice cut through the office like a knife. Everyone pretended to keep working, but Lisa could see people stealing glances from behind their computer screens. "Are you trying to make my company look cheap? Do you think I built this empire so you could hand me reports that look like they came from a high school project?" Kevin's face turned bright red. "Sir, I can reprint it right now. It'll just take me 2 minutes to—" 2 minutes? Alexander's voice got louder. "I don't have 2 minutes to waste because you can't follow simple instructions. This is exactly the kind of lazy thinking that destroys companies. Maybe you're not cut out for this level of work." Lisa felt her stomach twist into knots. She had seen this happen so many times before. Good people, talented people getting torn down over tiny mistakes that could be fixed in seconds. Kevin stood there taking it, probably thinking about his student loans and rent payment, knowing he couldn't afford to lose this job. The worst part wasn't even Alexander's words. It was watching how everyone else just sat there, pretending nothing was happening. Lisa understood why. She had tried to speak up for employees before, and Alexander had made it very clear that anyone who questioned his methods could find themselves looking for a new job. After Kevin practically ran back to his desk to reprint the report, Alexander continued his morning walk through the office. This wasn't just about getting to his corner office. This was his daily reminder to everyone about who was in charge. Jennifer, who worked in marketing, accidentally made eye contact with him as he passed her cubicle. "Big mistake, Jennifer, right?" Alexander stopped walking. Jennifer nodded, probably wishing she could disappear into her chair. "How's that social media campaign coming along? The one that was supposed to increase our online presence by 15%? "It's going really well, Mr. Cross. We're actually up 12% already and—" 12%? Alexander interrupted. "I said 15. Are you telling me you're satisfied with failing to meet targets?" Jennifer looked confused. "But sir, we still have 3 weeks left in the quarter. The numbers are actually ahead of our timeline. I don't want to hear excuses. I want results. If you can't deliver what you promise, maybe I need someone who can." Lisa watched Jennifer's hands shake as she nodded and turned back to her computer. The girl was 26 years old, had a master's degree in marketing, and had already brought in 2 major clients this month. But none of that mattered when Alexander decided to make an example out of someone. The office had a strange kind of rhythm to it. When Alexander was in meetings or out of the building, people actually talked to each other. They shared jokes, helped each other with projects, and acted like normal human beings. But the moment he appeared, everyone transformed into these scared, quiet versions of themselves. Tom, who worked in IT, had developed what people called the Alexander Early Warning System. He had figured out how to track Alexander's location through the building's security badge system. When Alexander was heading toward their floor, Tom would send out a quick message to everyone: "Storm coming." It was their code to wrap up any personal conversations and look busy. The lunch break was the only time people felt safe enough to really talk. Lisa often found herself in the break room, listening to coworkers share their frustrations in hushed voices. "I've been looking for other jobs," whispered Maria from Human Resources. "I can't take this anymore." Yesterday he yelled at me for 10 minutes because the new hire paperwork was in blue folders instead of manila ones. At least he talks to you, said Robert from the design team. He fired Amy last week without even telling her why. Just had security escort her out. She was one of our best graphic designers. Lisa had seen at least 30 good employees quit in the past 2 years, not because they found better opportunities, but because they couldn't handle the daily stress of walking on eggshells. The company was losing talented people left and right, but Alexander didn't seem to care. In his mind, if someone couldn't handle his high standards, they weren't worth keeping anyway. The strangest part was how different Alexander could be with clients and investors. Lisa had watched him transform completely during important meetings. He would become charming, funny, and actually pleasant to be around. It was like watching an actor switch between roles. With outsiders, he was the brilliant, successful CEO. With his own employees, he was something else entirely. What made it worse was that Alexander wasn't always wrong about business stuff. He had good ideas and could spot problems that others missed, but instead of helping people learn and improve, he would tear them down for not already knowing everything he knew. The building itself even felt different on weekends when Alexander wasn't there. Lisa sometimes came in on Saturdays to catch up on work, and it was amazing how relaxed and productive people could be when they weren't worried about being humiliated for small mistakes. But Monday always came, and with it, the return of the fear. People would arrive early, double-check everything, and mentally prepare themselves for another week of walking through a minefield. As Lisa watched Kevin finally deliver his reprinted report, she wondered how much longer this could go on. Something had to change. The question was what, and who would be brave enough to make it happen? Maya Rodriguez stepped off the bus at 5th Avenue, looking up at the gleaming glass tower that housed Crosstech Industries. At 24 years old, she had finally landed a job that could help her pay off her student loans and maybe even save a little money for the first time in years. The cafeteria cashier position wasn't glamorous, but it was steady work with decent benefits. She clutched the folder with her employment paperwork, feeling both nervous and excited. Maya had grown up in a small apartment with her grandmother, Abuela Carmen, who had raised her after her parents died in a car accident when she was 12. Abuela Carmen worked as a housekeeper for wealthy families her entire life, and she had taught Maya something important. Mija, it doesn't matter how much money someone has. Everyone deserves to be treated with respect. And if someone treats you badly, you don't have to just take it. Those words had gotten Maya through some tough times. College had been a struggle, working 2 part-time jobs while studying business administration. She had dreams of maybe starting her own small business someday, but for now, she needed this job to survive. The lobby of Crosstech was incredible. Marble floors, modern art on the walls, and a waterfall feature that probably cost more than Maya's entire education. The security guard, an older man named Pete, checked her ID and gave her a visitor's badge. "First day?" Pete asked with a kind smile. "Yes, sir. I'm starting in the cafeteria." "Good luck, kid. The cafeteria folks are nice people. Just keep your head down and you'll do fine." Maya thought that was an odd thing to say, but she thanked him and headed to the elevator. She was supposed to meet with Diana, the cafeteria manager, at 8 in the morning for training. The cafeteria was on the 15th floor, and Maya was amazed by how fancy it was. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city, and the space looked more like an upscale restaurant than a company lunchroom. There were different food stations, a salad bar, a grill area, and even a coffee shop section. Diana turned out to be a woman in her 50s with graying hair and tired eyes. She seemed nice enough, but Maya noticed she kept looking around nervously, like she was expecting something bad to happen. "Okay, honey, let me show you how everything works," Diana said, leading Maya to the main cash register. "The system is pretty simple. Most employees just scan their badges and the cost comes out of their paychecks automatically. Some prefer to pay cash, especially visitors and delivery people." As Diana explained the computer system, Maya started to pick up on something strange. Every few minutes, Diana would pause and listen carefully to the sounds coming from the elevator area. "Is everything okay?" Maya asked. Diana looked uncomfortable. "Yeah, it's just..." "Well, you'll earn soon enough. Mr. Cross, the CEO, he can be demanding. When he's on this floor, everyone gets a little nervous." "Demanding how?" Diana glanced around to make sure no one was listening. "He doesn't like mistakes. Any mistakes. And he's not shy about letting people know when he's unhappy. Just be extra careful when he's around, okay? Maya spent the morning learning the register system, memorizing the prices for different items, and getting familiar with the layout. The cafeteria staff was small but friendly. There was Carlos, who worked the grill and had been there for 6 years. Rita handled the salad bar and dessert section. And there was young Tyler, who was probably only a year older than Maya, working as a prep cook while going to culinary school at night. Around lunchtime, the cafeteria started filling up with employees. Maya was surprised by how quiet everyone seemed. In her previous jobs, lunch areas were usually buzzing with conversation and laughter. Here people spoke in low voices and seemed to eat quickly. Is it always this quiet? Maya asked Rita during a brief break between customers. Rita shrugged. People are just focused on their work, I guess. This is a very professional environment. But Maya noticed something else. Every time the elevator dinged, several people would look toward the entrance with worried expressions. It reminded her of how animals in nature documentaries would freeze when they sensed a predator nearby. Around 1:30, Maya understood what everyone was worried about. The elevator doors opened, and a man in an expensive suit stepped out. Even from across the cafeteria, Maya could feel the change in the room's energy. Conversations stopped mid-sentence. People suddenly became very interested in their food. The man had to be Alexander Cross. He was tall, probably in his mid-40s with dark hair and sharp features. He moved through the cafeteria like he owned not just the building but everyone in it. And technically, Maya realized he kind of did. Maya watched as Alexander approached the coffee station where Tyler was refilling the cream dispensers. She couldn't hear what was being said, but she could see Tyler's body language change completely. His shoulders tensed up and he started nodding rapidly at whatever Alexander was telling him. Then Alexander's voice got louder. This is unacceptable. Look at this mess. Maya looked over and saw that Tyler had apparently spilled a small amount of cream on the counter while refilling the dispenser. It was literally just a few drops, I'm sorry. Mr. Cross, I'll clean it up right away, Tyler said, reaching for a towel. This is exactly the kind of careless attitude that I won't tolerate in my building. Alexander continued, his voice carrying across the now silent cafeteria. Do you think our clients want to see sloppy work? Do you think this reflects well on Crosstech? Maya felt her stomach tighten. Tyler was one of the hardest working people she had met in her first day. He had stayed late the night before to prep vegetables for today's lunch service, and he had been nothing but professional and careful all morning. It won't happen again, sir, Tyler said quietly, quickly wiping down the counter. It better not. I'm watching you. Alexander grabbed a coffee and walked away, leaving Tyler standing there looking like he wanted to disappear. The entire interaction had lasted maybe 2 minutes, but Maya could see that Tyler's hands were actually shaking as he continued his work. What bothered Maya most wasn't just what Alexander had said, but how everyone else had reacted. 50 people had witnessed a young guy getting humiliated over a few drops of spilled cream, and not one person had said anything. They all just sat there, pretending it wasn't happening. After Alexander left, the cafeteria slowly returned to its previous quiet buzz. But Maya noticed that Tyler didn't look up from his work for the rest of the afternoon. Is that normal? Maya asked Diana when they had a moment alone. Diana looked around nervously before answering. Mr. Cross has high standards. Everyone here is expected to maintain them. But Maya had worked in restaurants and retail stores before. She knew the difference between high standards and bullying. What she had just witnessed wasn't about maintaining quality. It was about power and fear. That evening, riding the bus home to her small apartment, Maya couldn't stop thinking about Tyler's face. She thought about her grandmother's words about treating people with respect. She thought about all the quiet, scared-looking employees she had served lunch to. Maya had needed this job badly, and she couldn't afford to lose it. But she was starting to realize that working at Crosstech might require her to watch good people get treated badly, and just pretend it wasn't happening. The question was, could she do that? It was a Thursday morning, and Maya could tell something was different the moment she arrived at work. The usual nervous energy in the cafeteria felt even more intense. Diana was pacing behind the counter, checking and rechecking everything twice. Carlos was cleaning the grill for the 3rd time, and Rita kept reorganizing the salad bar even though it was already perfect. What's going on? Maya asked Tyler as she tied her apron. Tyler glanced around before answering quietly. Board meeting today. When Mr. Cross has board meetings, he gets extra intense. Maya had been working at Crosstech for 3 weeks now, and she was starting to understand the rhythm of the place. Alexander's mood seemed to affect the entire building like weather. When he was having a good day, people walked a little faster and spoke a little louder. When he was stressed, the whole place felt like it was holding its breath. Today felt like a storm was coming. The morning started normally enough. Maya served coffee and breakfast to the early arrivals, mostly people from the accounting department who liked to get to work before 7:30. These were quiet, hard-working folks who always said please and thank you, and often asked Maya how her day was going. Around 9 o'clock, Maya heard raised voices coming from the executive floor upstairs. Even through the ceiling, she could make out Alexander's voice above the others. The board meeting wasn't going well. By 10:30, word had spread through the building that there were problems. Lisa, the office manager, came down to grab coffee and mentioned to Diana that the quarterly profits weren't meeting expectations. Something about a competitor launching a product that was cutting into Crosstech's market share. Mr. Cross is not happy, Lisa said quietly. Everyone's trying to stay out of his way today, but in a building this size it was impossible for everyone to stay invisible. The first victim was Ben, a young guy from the marketing department. He made the mistake of getting in the elevator with Alexander around 11:15. Maya heard about it from Tyler, who had heard it from Carlos, who had heard it from someone in maintenance. Apparently Ben had been carrying a stack of promotional flyers for a new campaign. Alexander took one look at them and started ripping them apart, literally and figuratively. Something about the colors being wrong, the font being unprofessional, and the whole concept being amateur garbage that embarrasses the company. Ben spent the rest of the morning reprinting everything and trying not to cry at his desk. The second incident happened in the IT department. Rachel, who managed the company's computer systems, had the bad luck of having a server glitch during Alexander's presentation to the board. It wasn't her fault, these things happen with the technology, but Alexander blamed her personally for making him look incompetent in front of the board members. Maya heard about this one firsthand because Rachel came down to the cafeteria afterward looking completely shaken. She sat in a corner with a cup of coffee she never drank, just staring out the window. "Are you okay?" Maya asked when she brought Rachel a muffin. Rachel looked up with red eyes. "I've been working here for 4 years. I've never had a system failure during a meeting before. I stayed up until midnight last night making sure everything was perfect. It's not your fault technology glitched," Maya said gently. "Try telling him that." As lunchtime approached, Maya could feel the tension building throughout the building. People were walking faster, talking less, and looking over their shoulders more often. It was like everyone was waiting for something terrible to happen. Around 12:30, the something terrible arrived. David Chen was probably the nicest person Maya had met at Crosstech. He worked in IT support, helping employees when their computers had problems. He was quiet, polite, and always made sure to clean up after himself when he ate lunch. David had been at the company for almost 8 years, and everyone respected him for his patience and skill. David's mistake was being in the wrong place at the wrong time. Maya was wiping down tables when Alexander stormed into the cafeteria. She could tell immediately that his morning had gone from bad to worse. His face was red, his jaw was tight, and he was walking like he wanted to punch something. The cafeteria was packed with the usual lunch crowd, about 60 people scattered across the tables. Conversations died as Alexander entered, and Maya watched everyone suddenly become very interested in their food. Alexander grabbed a sandwich from the counter without saying a word to Maya, then looked around the room like he was hunting for something. His eyes landed on David, who was sitting alone at a small table by the windows, quietly eating a salad while reading something on his tablet. Maya felt her stomach drop. She had seen that look before. Alexander was looking for someone to blame for his bad day, and David had just become the target. "You." Alexander's voice cut across the silent cafeteria like a knife. "Chen?" David looked up, confused. "Yes, Mr. Cross? Your pathetic excuse for tech support just cost me the biggest deal of the quarter." Maya watched David's face change as he tried to understand what was happening. "Sir, I'm not sure what you mean. Did you have a technical issue I can help with?" "Help?" Alexander's voice got louder as he walked toward David's table. "You call what happened this morning help?" The presentation system crashed 3 times during my meeting with the board. 3 times. Do you have any idea how that made me look? David stood up slowly, his hands shaking slightly. Mr. Cross, I wasn't involved in setting up the presentation system today. That was handled by the AV department. But if there was a problem, I can look into it right away, and don't you dare try to pass the blame. Alexander was shouting now, and Maya could see spit flying from his mouth. Everything that goes wrong with technology in this building is your responsibility. That's what I pay you for. Maya looked around the cafeteria. 60 people were watching this happen, and every single one of them was just sitting there. Some were looking down at their plates, others were staring at their phones, and a few had actually gotten up and left, but no one was saying anything. I understand you're frustrated, sir, David said quietly. If you could tell me exactly what happened, I can make sure it doesn't happen again. What happened is that you made me look like an amateur in front of investors who could make or break this company. What happened is that your incompetence just lost us millions of dollars. Maya watched David's shoulders slump. She could see him trying to stay professional, trying to be respectful, even though he was being screamed at for something that wasn't his fault. I'll check all the systems right away. Mr. Cross, I'll run diagnostics on everything and make sure you'll do more than that. Alexander slammed his hand on David's table, making the dishes jump. You'll figure out how to fix the damage you've done. You'll work all weekend if you have to, and if I hear about one more technical problem, you'll be looking for a new job. That's when Maya noticed David's hands weren't just shaking anymore. There were actual tears forming in his eyes. This man who had worked here for 8 years, who had never done anything wrong, who went out of his way to help everyone with their computer problems, was being humiliated in front of his coworkers over something he didn't even do. Maya looked around the room again. Still, no one was saying anything. People were just letting this happen. That's when something clicked inside Maya's mind. She heard her grandmother's voice. If someone treats you badly, you don't have to just take it. But it wasn't just about her anymore. It was about David and Tyler and Ben and Rachel, and everyone else who had been treated like this. Maya took a deep breath and made a decision that would change everything. Maya felt her heart pounding as she watched David standing there, trying not to cry while Alexander continued yelling at him. Around the cafeteria, 60 people sat in complete silence, pretending this wasn't happening. Some were looking at their phones. Others were studying their food like it was the most interesting thing in the world. But Maya couldn't look away. She kept thinking about what her grandmother had taught her. About dignity. About respect. About how everyone deserves to be treated like a human being. David was a good man. In the 3 weeks Maya had been working here, she had watched him help countless employees with computer problems. He never got frustrated even when people called him about the same issue multiple times. He always said please and thank you when he bought his lunch. He was the kind of person who held doors open for others and remembered people's names, and now he was being destroyed in front of everyone over something that wasn't even his fault. Maya looked around the room one more time. Diana was behind the counter, staring at the floor. Tyler had disappeared into the kitchen. Carlos was suddenly very busy cleaning something that was already clean. Lisa from the office management was at a table near the back, looking like she wanted to disappear into her chair. Everyone was scared. Everyone was just hoping Alexander would finish his tantrum and leave, so they could go back to pretending everything was normal. But this wasn't normal. This was wrong. Maya took off her apron and walked out from behind the counter. Excuse me, Mr. Cross. Her voice wasn't loud, but in the dead silence of the cafeteria, it might as well have been a gunshot. Alexander stopped mid-sentence and turned to look at her. His face was still red with anger, and for a second Maya felt like she might throw up. What did you say? Alexander's voice was dangerous and quiet. Maya could feel every pair of eyes in the room turning toward her. She could feel Diana's panic from across the room. She could practically hear Tyler holding his breath in the kitchen. I said, excuse me, sir. Maya's voice was steadier than she felt. I think there's been a misunderstanding. Alexander stared at her like she was some kind of alien creature. Who are you? I'm Maya. I work the register here, and I need to tell you something. You need to tell me something? Alexander's voice was getting that dangerous edge again. You're a cashier. You ring up sandwiches. What could you possibly need to tell me? Maya felt her knees shaking, but she kept talking. David didn't set up your presentation today. I heard Rachel from IT talking about it earlier. She said the AV department handles all the boardroom equipment. David works on desktop computers and helps people with software problems. The silence in the room was so thick you could have cut it with a knife. Maya could see David looking at her with wide, shocked eyes. She could see Diana behind the counter, probably calculating how quickly she could find a new cashier. Alexander took a step toward Maya. "Are you telling me I'm wrong?" "I'm telling you that you're yelling at the wrong person," Maya said. Her voice was getting stronger now. "And even if David had been responsible, there's no reason to talk to him like that. He's a human being. He deserves respect." "Respect?" Alexander's laugh was cold and mean. "Do you know who I am? I built this company from nothing. I employ over 1,000 people. I could buy and sell you 100 times over." "That doesn't give you the right to treat people badly," Maya replied. She thought about her grandmother, who had cleaned houses for rich families her whole life but never let anyone make her feel small. "Money doesn't make you better than anyone else. It just makes you richer." Alexander's face was turning an even deeper shade of red. "You have no idea what you're talking about. You have no idea what it takes to run a company, to make the decisions I make every day. Everyone here has a job because of me. And David has been doing his job perfectly for 8 years," Maya shot back. "Ask anyone here. Ask them if David has ever let them down when they needed help with their computers. Ask them if he's ever been anything but professional and kind." Maya looked around the room. "Go ahead. Ask them." For a moment, nobody moved. Then slowly, Lisa from the back of the room cleared her throat. "She's right," Lisa said quietly. "David fixed my computer last week when it crashed. He stayed an hour past closing time to make sure I didn't lose any of my work." Alexander spun around to glare at Lisa, but before he could say anything, another voice spoke up. "David helped me set up the new software for our entire department," said Ben from marketing. "He spent a whole weekend training our team, even though it wasn't part of his regular duties. He rescued 3 months of my research when my hard drive died," added Rachel, who was still sitting in the corner with her untouched coffee. More voices started joining in. Quiet at first, then stronger. "David always fixes problems quickly and explains things so we can understand. He never makes you feel stupid for asking questions. He's helped every single person in this room at some point." Maya watched Alexander's face as he realized what was happening. The entire cafeteria was defending David. People who had been too scared to speak up for themselves were finally finding their voices, but they weren't just defending David. They were defending each other. "Mr. Cross," Maya said, her voice calm now. "These are good people. They work hard, they care about this company, and they deserve to be treated with dignity. David didn't cause your presentation problems today, but even if he had, yelling at him in front of everyone isn't going to fix anything." Alexander looked around the room at all the faces staring back at him. For the first time since Maya had been working there, he looked uncertain. "Everyone here respects you for what you've built," Maya continued. "But respect has to go both ways. You can't demand it from people if you won't give it to them." The cafeteria was completely silent again, but this time it felt different. It didn't feel like fear. It felt like 60 people holding their breath, waiting to see what would happen next. Alexander stood there for what felt like forever, looking from Maya to David to all the other faces around the room. His mouth opened like he was going to say something, then closed again. Finally, without another word, he turned and walked toward the elevator. As soon as the elevator doors closed behind him, the entire cafeteria seemed to exhale at once. People started talking in hushed, excited voices. Some got up from their tables to check on David, who was still standing by the window looking dazed. Diana rushed over to Maya, her face pale with worry. "Maya, honey, what you done?" she whispered. "He's going to fire you. He's probably going to fire all of us." But Maya felt strangely calm. She had done the right thing. For the first time in 3 weeks, she felt like herself again. "Maybe," she said, "but at least David knows he's not alone." And as she looked around the room at all the people who had finally found their voices, Maya realized something important. Neither was she. The rest of that Thursday felt like the entire building was buzzing with electricity. Maya couldn't believe how quickly word spread about what had happened in the cafeteria. By 2 o'clock, people from floors she had never been to were coming down just to see her. "Are you the girl who stood up to Mr. Cross?" a woman from the legal department asked quietly while buying a coffee. Is it true you actually told him he was wrong? Whispered someone from accounting. Maya tried to keep working normally, but it was impossible to ignore the constant stream of people stealing glances at her. Some looked at her like she was crazy. Others looked at her like she was some kind of hero. A few looked at her like they were seeing a ghost, probably because they expected Alexander to fire her any minute. David came back to the cafeteria around 3:30. Maya was worried he might be angry with her for making a scene, but instead he walked straight up to the counter where she was working. "Thank you," he said simply. "No one has ever done anything like that for me before." "You didn't deserve to be treated that way," Maya replied. "Nobody does," David nodded, his eyes still a little red. "I was starting to think maybe I really was bad at my job. When someone screams at you like that in front of everyone." He trailed off, then looked at Maya directly. "You made me remember who I actually am." As the afternoon went on, Maya noticed something interesting happening. People were talking to each other more, not in the usual hushed, nervous voices, but actually talking. She overheard conversations about work projects, weekend plans, even complaints about the coffee quality. It was like Maya's moment of speaking up had given everyone else permission to use their voices too. But Maya was still worried about what would happen next. Diana kept checking on her every few minutes, clearly expecting security to show up and escort Maya out of the building. Tyler couldn't concentrate on his work, constantly looking toward the elevator. Even Carlos, who usually stayed calm no matter what, seemed jumpy. "Maybe I should just quit before he fires me," Maya said to Diana during a quiet moment. "I don't want to cause problems for everyone else. Don't you dare," Diana said firmly. "What you did today was the bravest thing I've seen in my 20 years of working. If he fires you for standing up for someone, then this isn't the kind of place any of us should be working anyway." Friday morning came, and Maya arrived at work expecting to find a termination notice waiting for her. Instead, she found something completely unexpected. Pete, the security guard from the lobby, was waiting by the cafeteria entrance with a huge smile on his face. "Maya, right?" Pete asked. "I've got a message for you. Mr. Hawkins from the board of directors wants to see you in his office at 9 o'clock. Maya's heart sank. The board of directors. This was it. She was definitely getting fired. But when Maya arrived at the executive floor, she discovered she wasn't alone. David was there, along with Lisa, Rachel, and about a dozen other employees. They were all sitting in a conference room looking just as confused as Maya felt. Mr. Hawkins turned out to be a man in his 60s with kind eyes and gray hair. He was the chairman of Crosstech's board of directors, and he looked nothing like what Maya had expected. "Thank you all for coming," Mr. Hawkins said, closing the door behind him. "I wanted to talk to you about what happened yesterday." Maya braced herself for the worst. "For the past 6 months," Mr. Hawkins continued, "this board has been receiving reports about problems with workplace culture here at Crosstech. Anonymous complaints about harassment, bullying, and fear among the employees. We've been trying to figure out how serious the situation really was." He looked around the room at all their faces. "Yesterday we got our answer." Maya felt her stomach drop. Someone must have reported what happened. She was definitely in trouble now. 3 different people called me last night to tell me about a young woman who stood up to protect a co-worker from being verbally abused. They said it was the most courageous thing they had ever witnessed in a workplace. Maya blinked in surprise. She hadn't expected that. "The truth is," Mr. Hawkins said, "we've been looking for a way to address Mr. Cross's management style for some time. His behavior has been driving away talented employees and creating a toxic environment. But we needed to understand the full scope of the problem before we could take action." He pulled out a folder full of papers. "Over the past 24 hours, I've received 43 emails from employees sharing their experiences. Stories about public humiliation, unfair treatment, and fear of speaking up. Your actions yesterday, Maya, gave people the courage to finally tell us what's been happening." Maya looked around the room at her co-workers. Everyone seemed as shocked as she felt. "So what happens now?" David asked quietly. "Now we make changes," Mr. Hawkins said firmly. "Effective immediately, Mr. Cross will be working with an executive coach and attending mandatory leadership training. We're also implementing new policies to protect employees from workplace harassment and creating anonymous reporting systems so people can speak up safely." He looked directly at Maya. "And we're promoting you to a new position we're creating, employee advocate. Your job will be to help ensure that every person in this company is treated with dignity and respect." Maya couldn't believe what she was hearing. "But I'm just a cashier. I don't have any experience with—" "You have the most important qualification," Mr. Hawkins interrupted. "You have courage, and you care about people." Over the next few weeks, Maya watched in amazement as Crosstech began to transform. Alexander did return to work, but he was different, quieter, more thoughtful. Maya heard he had personally apologized to David and several other employees. He still had high standards, but he started expressing his concerns through proper channels instead of public humiliation. The new employee policies made a huge difference. People started speaking up about problems before they became major issues. Managers received training on respectful communication. Most importantly, employees began to trust that they could voice concerns without fear of retaliation. Maya's new role turned out to be both challenging and rewarding. She helped establish mentorship programs, organized team-building activities, and served as a confidential resource for employees who were struggling with workplace issues. She also worked with HR to create better hiring practices and exit interview processes. But the biggest change was in the atmosphere of the building itself. The cafeteria became a place where people actually enjoyed eating lunch. Conversations flowed naturally. People laughed. The elevator rides were no longer silent journeys of fear. David flourished in the new environment. Without the constant stress of worrying about unfair criticism, his work improved even more. He was eventually promoted to head of IT security, and he never forgot to thank Maya for giving him back his confidence. 6 months later, Maya was riding the bus home after a particularly good day at work when her phone buzzed with a text message. It was from her grandmother. "Mija, I heard about your new job from Mrs. Rodriguez next door. She says her daughter works in your building now and loves it there. I'm proud of you for remembering what I taught you. Sometimes the most important thing you can do is stand up for someone who can't stand up for themselves." Maya smiled as she put her phone away. She thought about that scared 24-year-old who had started working at Crosstech, just wanting to pay her student loans. She could never have imagined that one moment of courage would change not just her own life, but the lives of hundreds of coworkers. As the bus pulled up to her stop, Maya realized something important. Courage wasn't about not being afraid. It was about doing the right thing even when you were terrified. And sometimes that one moment of doing the right thing could change everything.